Since the next big reveal for Valhalla probably isn't until Ubisoft's Forward event, we're doing something a bit different this time. A discussion video. I asked my community which topics they were most interested in, and this suggestion was too good to pass up. How will Valhalla return to the series' roots, the foundations that made many of us fall in love in the first place? Luckily, I've been replaying the entire series for the past few months. Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, and 3. I've done everything from guild challenges to DLC, homestead missions, and optional side activities. Everything except feathers. You can't make me collect the feathers. I won't do it. From everything we know so far, Valhalla is going to blend features of the newer Assassin's Creed games with the older ones, in a way that neither Origins nor Odyssey attempted to do. Let's take a look at 5 ways Valhalla will feel like the old Assassin's Creed. In countless interviews, Ubisoft has emphasized the importance of the settlement in Valhalla. Eivor will need allies to help raid the English countryside and to protect the people. For that reason, recruiting Jomsvikings will be a core part of the gameplay loop. We'll go on adventures, encounter new people, and recruit them to our cause. Recruiting, training, and calling assassins into battle was first introduced in Brotherhood. At the time, it was a clever and novel concept. It feels empowering to give the signal and see your assassins take down targets. It was also rooted in the narrative. The Borgias had taken over Rome, and the assassins needed allies, so Ezio turns to the people and arms them against their oppressors. Each citizen has a mini recruitment cutscene where Ezio convinces them to join. Then they gained experience by completing contracts to help the Brotherhood all across Europe. This is capped off by a final ceremony when they reach the rank of Master Assassin. It's a cohesive, engaging experience that lends to Ezio's legacy as the mentor. This feature is expanded upon in Revelations, where we actually get to see Ezio mentoring his recruits. He teaches them valuable lessons on missions before they become Master Assassins. It's even more impactful here because we see a wiser, more mature Ezio taking recruits under his wing. This system evolves even further in Assassin's Creed 3, where I think it's executed even better. There's a narrow, more focused roster of recruits. Connor interacts with these characters frequently, and they're relevant over the course of the entire story instead of just on these one-off missions. They have developed backstories and unique abilities that Connor can call upon to use. I was quite frankly impressed by the depth and polish of this system in Assassin's Creed 3. After that game, though, you don't see a true recruitment and training mechanic return. You could say Black Flag and Rogue reinvented their own versions of the system with fleet management, but it's not exactly the same. Syndicate has gangs, but the system is so underutilized and streamlined. Odyssey has lieutenants for the Adrestia, but again, there's no depth, narrative weight, or attention given to the system. We don't know whether we'll be recruiting our Jomsvikings into the Brotherhood or if they're simply going to fight for Eivor's cause. But we will know their names, we'll see their faces, and we'll interact with them throughout the story. They won't just disappear after we see them once. We know that we'll assign 8 Jomsvikings at a time to the Drakkar, and we know we can call them into battle like the older games as long as we're close enough to the Drakkar. But we can't call them from absolutely anywhere, which I kinda like because it makes the world feel more realistic and grounded, instead of having the ability to call an arrow storm from literally anywhere like we used to. The settlement system in Valhalla has been described as key to the experience. It's at the heart of the journey and central to Eivor's goal to find stability for his community and a permanent home in England. It's at the center of narrative decisions, where we see consequences play out and alliances forged. We first saw a settlement or city management system in Assassin's Creed 2. Uncle Mario tasks Ezio with renovating city buildings and structures. Funding these renovations generates revenue, and this concept forms the basis for the economy system throughout the Ezio trilogy. While there's certainly narrative motivation to rebuild Monteriggioni, there's not much depth beyond dumping your florins into the villa in order to earn more florins. This system expands big time time in Brotherhood, and it shifts the focus towards rebuilding Rome instead of a centralized home base. Renovating shops, faction buildings, tunnels, and landmarks generates even more income. And there's further narrative motivation, since the Templars had infiltrated the Vatican and effectively controlled Rome from the top down. However, the sheer volume of renovations turns this into more of a chore than anything. After a dozen or so buildings, the charm wears off. Revelations takes a sidestep with this system, pretty much copy-pasting the same ideas from Rome into Constantinople, but it's lost all of its novelty at this point. The entire settlement concept is overhauled in Assassin's Creed 3, and I have to give credit to this game once again because Davenport Homestead feels like the most complete version. Throughout the narrative, we encounter skilled tradesmen looking for a place to set up shop. Connor recruits them to settle on his land, building up the community and offering him their services, which helps in crafting and trading. The settlement feeds into the economy system, which ditched the renovations for trade convoys. Your craftsmen generate resources, then you can use those resources to craft items or just pack a convoy full of raw materials and send it off to a merchant to sell. Now, the UI is an absolute nightmare, but once you figure it out, it creates a meaningful connection between multiple parts of the game that the previous games never come close to. Also, the premise of running trade caravans through the American frontier is truly embedded in the setting. It makes perfect sense. After Assassin's Creed 3, we get a variety of quasi-settlement and economy systems. In Black Flag, Edward can renovate a couple of shops along with his hideout in Grand Inagua, but that's about it. Shay can renovate buildings to generate income in Rogue. Unity lets us upgrade the Cafe Theater and renovate new locations for expansion. We can also perform missions for the manager, which reintroduces some narrative weight to the system. But then Syndicate regresses, opting for no city management and a passive economy system increased via gang upgrades. After the reboot, Origins and Odyssey have no form of settlement or income generation. In Valhalla, if I had to guess, we're probably not going to be renovating. We may use old Britannic ruins and structures that are there from hundreds of years ago, but from what I've seen, I believe we'll be creating new buildings. And each of them has a purpose in gameplay. We'll visit the blacksmith to craft and buy new weapons, the tattoo parlor to get some ink, and the barracks to consult our war chief and Viking warriors. Ubisoft have compared it to the Skyhold in Inquisition and the Normandy in Mass Effect. Also, I've seen plenty of comparisons to the camp system in Red Dead Redemption 2. But most of all, to me, it sounds like the Davenport Homestead, just a better, more expanded version. Valhalla is ditching a formal leveling system for what Ubisoft has called power. Eivor's strength is dictated by a combination of gear, abilities, and tools rather than levels. But we know that Eivor's power will be represented in some way. I'm guessing it could be like a gear score, ability rating, something like that. Before the reboot, Assassin's Creed approaches player progression like most action-adventure games. It gradually introduces new tools and mechanics as we play through the story. For upgrading, the series has mostly relied on the economy system. For the most part, you're buying and crafting new weapons, armor, and upgrades, with the exception of very special gear unlocked via side activities. Each piece of gear has specific stats, which allow you to take on stronger enemies and destroy weaker ones. The more upgrades you buy, the more options and tools we have at our disposal. Assassin's Creed Unity and Syndicate is really where the series switched up progression. Instead of buying new items from shops, you just pull up a menu and purchase or craft from there. These games introduced RPG-style leveling and skill point systems too, having us progress through upgrade trees to unlock new abilities and upgrade existing ones. These decisions can be seen as streamlining the experience, but you lose the element of immersion. I want to visit a store to buy an item, not spend my currency in a menu and magically have the items appear in my inventory. In Origins, we see this system return in a more grounded form. Syndicate introduced the idea of enemy levels. Now, we've always had different tiers of enemies, some hitting harder or having more health than others, but Syndicate frames these concepts with levels and roots them in the progression more like an RPG would. It uses this concept to separate regions of London from one another based on the level or difficulty. Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey push Syndicate's RPG elements even further with leveling and skill point systems. Similar to Syndicate, if you try to tackle a quest or area higher than your level, you get wrecked. However, you can adjust the scaling to make things more forgiving. And it's worth noting that these games have difficulty modes for additional customization. Origins and Odyssey introduced more aggressive RPG MMO elements via the loot system. Activities and enemies drop procedurally generated gear rolls, which you would use to min-max your character. This came with a reimagined inventory screen to manage gear, again very similar to more loot-driven RPG experiences. The variety of stats and effects on gear were exponentially expanded. Valhalla will have a skill system described as a skill graph with over 400 points to spend. We also know that it still has the 3 archetypes skill tree like Origins and Odyssey, but it's less defined this time. However, unlike Origins and Odyssey, every single piece of gear is unique, and that reminds me more of the older games. We've also been told that there's no more grinding, that Ubisoft is avoiding progression walls that would keep players from accessing different parts of the game. We should be able to finish the main story without grinding or needing to side quest, which once again is more like the older games. Ubisoft has confirmed that social stealth will return in Valhalla. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly what that means yet. Social stealth encompasses a broad set of concepts over the series. We have profiles, social status, notoriety, and environmental blending. Social stealth has always been uniquely Assassin's Creed. It dictates movement, actions, and informs on strategy for any given task. You can approach in high profile, sprinting into combat with swords drawn, or in low profile, blending with your environment to close in and execute your target silently. The social status indicates whether you are anonymous or exposed, forcing you to break line of sight to lose your pursuers. The notoriety system adds consequences to your actions. Take too many high-profile moves and guards notice you immediately, unless you bribe heralds, assassinate officials, or tear down wanted posters. It's by no means a perfect system, but it was a series staple. This gameplay loop persists in similar forms until the reboot. Black Flag and Rogue opted for a wanted system that made more sense with all of the naval gameplay, but it was similar enough. Unity and Syndicate have a dedicated stealth mode, which let us crouch behind objects to limit lines of sight. These games removed any sort of notoriety system, because once you escaped conflict, you're anonymous until you enter it again. With Origins, social stealth is effectively removed. No more using crowds and other people to blend in with the environment. However, stealth gameplay is still possible with the ability to hide in tall grass and crouching to sneak around. Notoriety, you could say, returns in the form of the mercenary system, which sends bounty hunters after you if you violate the law. Social stealth didn't return in Odyssey, and stealth gameplay functions the exact same as it does in Origins. In Valhalla, we do know that we can manually take our hood on and off to reduce detection, which is super awesome. We can also feign death to trick enemies, which has multiple applications. It's reasonable to expect that we can hide in tall grass and haystacks like we've always been able to. We don't know if or how the old school notoriety system will return. My money is on another mercenary system because it makes sense for Saxon kings to hire mercenaries to take out Eivor. But I would say good luck, because we're going to be surrounded by our Jomsvikings most of the time. Valhalla is going to re-emphasize the connection to the modern day plot and the animus. We know that Valhalla will have the memory corridor, blank slate loading screens from the older games, but we don't know about assassination interrogation scenes yet. I made an entire video about how I miss the old Assassin's Creed because of the animus, the connection between the modern day and historical plot lines, which you can watch clicking the card on the screen now. While I recognize a lot of folks think the series is better without the modern day plot, it is essential to what made the original games Assassin's Creed. Throughout the Desmond saga, we're constantly reminded that we're in the animus. So much so that we play as Desmond a lot. There are many modern day sequences, and then within the animus you have things like truth puzzles and collectibles like data fragments. A lot of these details get lost, starting with Black Flag. We get some modern day plot, but after Desmond, it's executed poorly. The Juno arc is built up, but is ultimately resolved in a graphic novel after Syndicate. For the narrative, it mattered that the animus only let you experience your ancestors' memories instead of anyone you pleased. Black Flag rewrote that rule permanently. Now, in most of the games, memory corridors were shown as loading screens. Again, it's that blank void where you can walk around while the game loads. We also saw these when our protagonist interrogated their targets for information after assassinating them. For some strange reason, Unity abandoned the memory corridors, instead giving Arno the ability to see his target's memories after killing them. And I guess that's functionally similar to interrogating, but it's far less unique as a concept. Syndicate fortunately reintroduces the interrogations, but they don't have the corridor loading screens. Origins went back and reintroduced memory corridors for loading screens and assassinations. And then Odyssey removed memory corridors entirely. As you can see, it's flip-flopped back and forth so many times. I'm sure some of you are wondering, why do you care? It's silly to care this much about how loading screens look, but it really worked to cement the fact that we're in the animus experiencing our ancestors' memories. It anchors us to that modern day plotline, and that's a critical detail for people like me. The fact that Ashraf is making Valhalla gives me hope, because he did bring those concepts back for Origins when he could have easily abandoned them like Odyssey did. That was 5 ways Valhalla will feel more like the old Assassin's Creed. From what we know so far, it feels like Ashraf and the team are crafting an experience that older fans of the series will truly appreciate, and I hope that comes true. Please let me know in the comments below if you liked this type of discussion video. I've tried to stay away from speculation because I've gotten so many amazing kind comments from you guys saying how you appreciate that I stick to the facts. I don't want to waste your time with 10-minute videos speculating on 1 or 2 pieces of information like every other day. So please let me know if you'd like to see another video similar to this one before the Ubisoft Forward event on July 12th. Remember to subscribe to my channel if you learned something new, and stay tuned for more Valhalla content. Follow me on social media and on Discord to discuss more Valhalla or other games coming out soon. Big thanks to my patrons Bill, Grass, Jackie, Spyro, and Kamal for supporting me as a creator. And if you want to support me further, check out my Patreon, where you can find a lot of exclusive content like updates on new videos and behind the scenes content. For more information, link is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.